What's going on, guys? I'm back with another video, and before I tell you what this video is about, you can probably tell by the thumbnail. The FTMO challenge, I will be doing it again starting on the 27th. If not, I'm going to do it the week after. So going further into the beginning of the month, it's either I start at the end or at the beginning of the month. That's what I like to do because the most movement happens there. And since I only have 30 days, I want to make sure that I catch the most movement when I start, right? The video is going to be about scalping. Now, these are the 3 scalping strategies that I like to use personally. If I am going to be scalping, I'm going to tell you what time frame I use them on, and I'm going to do a separate video for each strategy to show you guys how it works in each market, either the London, the New York, and the Australian, or we can call it the Tokyo Australian, whichever one. But yeah, so the intro's about to roll. I haven't rolled in a long time. Okay, so the first scalping strategy that I have is using session boxes. Now, if for any of you who are watching this channel and you've seen my chart setup, you'll notice that I have session boxes. And what those are is they're separating the London session, the European session, and the Tokyo session, okay? Now, I have it color coordinated to each session. Now, how do you use session boxes in order to scalp? High and low of the day. That's how that works, okay? So you're basically waiting for a market to open, see where it opens at, and you're trading off of either the high of the day or the low of the day. This is one of those strategies that I don't use as actively, but it's still a very good strategy. How do you use this strategy? Let's move to the whiteboard for me to explain it a little bit further. Okay, so the session boxes. I'm just gonna write a session on the board here. How does it work? So each session, as you guys know, pertaining to my time frame, will change according to yours, right? Each session box is going to tell you the beginning of the session, and it's going to tell you the end of the session as it ends. The session box will continue to move as each 15-minute candle moves. The way I have my session box set up is it will give me information on the 15-minute chart. I personally like to scalp on the 15-minute chart. So my session boxes are set up to give me the perfect sequence, or I guess box, to fit out the London session, Tokyo session, or the New York session, whichever one. Now you're probably asking me, how am I going to figure out what is the high of the day or the low of the day? Well, we've knocked off half of the work with the session box, but it's very easy for a market to possibly establish a high or establish a low and then still break that throughout the day. And that's where the strategy is going to fall apart, so to speak. You got to understand, like I tell you guys all the time, your strategy is not going to work all the time. You just need to be prepared and have a strategy that's going to win more than it loses, okay? So when it comes to the high of the day and the low of the day, what you're usually looking for is either a candlestick pattern, or a possible support and resistance at the high or the low of the day. All right. Now on this channel, I know I haven't touched candlestick patterns with you guys because I didn't really want to overcomplicate things too much. Okay. But how candlestick patterns works is, if those are who are familiar with Forex, you have things like the doji, morning star, evening star, spinning top, double top, double bottom, double top, double bottom. These are all forms of candlestick patterns. And then you have, like the ones I just named before, patterns within individual candles. My personal favorite is either the shooting star, okay, or the doji. Those are good signals personally for me intraday that are going to tell me the market may possibly reverse. All right, we've all seen dojis happen and not actually work as dojis, but like I said, this is a game where everybody is performing the same task, And with that being said, you got to understand that the institution are going to do things because we are all basically doing the same thing. Everybody's looking at the Euro USD, everybody's looking at the pound JPY. With that being said, you guys got to understand, like I said, the institution is going to do things in order to put you in places that you're not going to make money. So those are the candlestick patterns that I'm personally looking for when I'm trading under the session boxes. All right. So usually, ideally, what I'm looking for at a high or low of the day is a shooting star on a second touch of the either low of the day or high of the day. And what would that look like? I can kind of try to get a picture here for you guys, but the shooting star usually looks like this. So it's usually a long wicked candle that has basically a very small open and a very small close, but it did wick out all the way to here. Shooting star, hence the name, right? All right, so that's my favorite pattern usually to see if I'm going to be trading off the session boxes. The way a shooting star works, there has to be two pertaining candles that engulf it in order for it to be named a shooting star. So you need to see a candle to the left that's either a big red candle and then the shooting star, and then a strong candle that's going upwards depending on the way or the direction that you're taking the trade. Now that was a lot for me to say. Like I said, for this, I'm going to do a live session where I can point out to you guys these patterns. Okay, so the shooting star, that's what that looks like. I did my best to draw you a picture, but those are the patterns I'm usually looking for when it comes to trading off of the session boxes. If I can see a support or a resistance, then that's even better, because now I have a high of the day and I have a preceding resistance that can possibly allow me to make money intraday. Remember that when you're trading these, you're scalping. You're probably looking for at max 4 candles at max. Maybe if you're lucky you can get 30 pips, but you're scalping 10 to 15 pips, and unfortunately you're usually over leveraging, guys, when you're scalping. We know this. That's the only way you can scalp. You're looking for short intraday moves that are going to make you a lot of money. Okay, so you're more likely over leveraging on this scalp, unless you're one of those people who are extremely patient and you don't mind scalping at smaller lot sizes to bring in small profits faster. But usually, like I said, if you're scalping, hence the name scalping, you want to make fast money. Okay, so that's how I like to set up the charts when I'm doing the session boxes. Evening star, morning star, doji, engulfing sometimes, but that's more so into the price action. Okay, and we're going to touch that in a second. But session boxes, if you guys want the setup to the charts that I have for the MT4, I know a lot of you guys out there probably use TradingView, but I can give you the chart setup for the MT4 that will fill out the session boxes for you, and all we have to do is tweak them pertaining to your time frame or the place that you live in. Okay, my next scalping strategy that I really enjoy, exponential moving averages. You might have noticed, those who have been watching me on the live stream, that at times I will have exponential moving averages on my charts. Which exponential moving averages do I have? I'll tell you right now. The 16, the 50, the 200, the 800, and the 3000. Okay? For those who understand exponential moving averages, all an exponential moving average, depending on the chart or time frame that you're on, it's going to give you information according to the number of candles back. So a 16 exponential moving average is going to give you 16 candles if you're on a 15-minute time frame backwards. 50, 200, and so on for every single moving average. So technically, which one would be your strongest moving average? Your 3,000. Your 3,000 is usually going to pop up in places where on the daily chart, things are happening. Support and resistance is there. Contracts are being triggered by bigger players. It's I can't say it's a mess, but like I said, it's a lot going on. Okay, that's where the 3,000 is. Your most insignificant exponential moving average is going to be your 16. So that's going to give you the least information, and any bounces or breaks off of these moving averages are not going to be significant. When you see your 3,000 show up, especially on your 15-minute or your hour, something's going on. How do I like to trade off of these moving averages on the 15-minute chart? Break and retest, or support becomes resistance and resistance becomes support. How I learned that was break and retest. How I learned that was support and resistance, vice versa. What you guys call it is support, break and retest, okay? So what I'm looking for generally is a break of the 50 moving average or a break of the 200. Those are my ideal. If I see my 800 pop up on my 3,000, I could definitely use those as support. These tend not to break as much because they hold more weight. 8,000 candles back. 800 candles back. 3,000 candles back. All right? So you're getting information that's so much further back in the market, meaning it's going to hold more strength. The only time I'm looking to trade off of the exponential moving averages and scalp is when I'm looking for interaction between price and my 50 moving average and price on and my 200 moving average. Generally what I'm looking for is always going with the trend, is a break and retest in the direction of the trend of my moving averages. Okay, so if it breaks my moving average and comes back, and it will always come back to retest it, that is a good indicator for me to know that this market is probably moving towards somewhere that I want to be on, or I'd like to get on that train wherever it's going. All right, so I'm usually looking for break and retest of my EMA 50 and my EMA 200. All right, another scalping strategy you can use on the 15-minute time frame. If you need to bump up maybe an hour to probably confirm, that would help a lot. Now, my last strategy for scalping is price action. And price action trading is simply identifying a market that's been stale because a possible session close or a possible holiday. And you then see a market break out of what we call a possible range, but it's on a smaller time frame. So maybe the Euro USD, for example, had been ranging after the New York session throughout the Tokyo session for maybe 4 hours. And then by the time 9:30 hits, and these are the ideal times for the Tokyo session to begin to move, it's usually 2 hours to 2 hours and a half after opening. Price action. Generally, when you're going to see the most price action is at the close and more likely open of a session. Personally, where I like to trade price action the most is around 2 a.m. my time frame. That would be considered the Swiss franc open, just before an hour just before the London open. I seem to notice the most movement. Another time frame I like to use price action on is for the Tokyo session. So that's between 9:30 and around, I'm starting to probably see movement between 9:30 all the way until about maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Then the market gets a little bit wonky. Like I said, because of the Swiss franc session, it's about to step in, and then you have the London in another hour. How does price action work? Well, technically, this is what usually you're going to see when you have price action. You're going to see a market that just is doing this. So these are candles. Okay, it's making very small candles. It's not moving. Price is not moving, and then all of a sudden, Price will break to either the upside or price will break to either the downside. Now, where you have to be careful with this strategy is there's always sometimes a fake out in the opposite direction for people who are attempting to trade a certain strategy where they trade a range breakout. And how that works is you set a buy limit and a sell limit in two different places, and then the stop losses above and under each other. So that way, if the market does break out, it will break out one way, trigger a trade, and then stop you out on the other trade. The problem with that is if you're not watching the trade could be stop hunted. And that's generally what happens, because a lot of people think that they can just set it and kind of forget it. Anything you think you've been doing and it works, the broker's gonna find a way to make it not work. That's how this works. It's a game of money. They're in the business to make money. Okay. So if you see either, I don't want to call it engulfing, but we can. Why? Because it's actually engulfing the range that we were already in. So if you see a candle breakout to either the upside or the downside, it's a possible good indicator that the market is going to go in that direction. Where you have to be careful with this is the fake outs. And you just, like I said, this is when the strategy is the strategy, but now you need to really figure yourself out. And how are you going to react to something like that? What's going to be your reaction if you know your strategy is a range breakout or price action? How are you going to react if you see price action go one way and then the market just completely flips and starts going the opposite way? You got to be able to think on the fly and move on the fly. You're scalping, okay? You're staring at charts, waiting to get in and get out of trades. Scalping can sometimes burn you because you run into horrible types of psychology where you're literally just telling yourself, I should have stayed longer, I should have got out earlier, I shouldn't have let that. Like, you're always counting out yourself because you're doing things on the fly. When you start to get up into the higher time frames, you're just waiting. Like, you know you're going to be holding a trade if you're trading on the week chart for at least a week, if not longer. Okay, when you're scalping, it can be very stressful. So the price action scalping, I'm going to tell you guys the ideal times I see price action, and then we're going to wrap up this video. Price action is happening the most between, obviously, we know the New York and the Euro USD time loop over. So when those two sessions are trading the most. My least favorite session is the New York session. Why? Because the Euro is still on between almost 11 to 12 from 8 o'clock in the morning from when it opens to 11 to about 11:30 when the European session closes. I don't like that type of movement. It makes my brain hurt. It's just too much going on. Wick to this side. Eventually the market sometimes does take a direction, but there's a lot of choppiness before it actually figures out where it's going to go. I don't like to trade price action like that. I need to see one candle go down, and then the beginning of the next 15-minute candle, that better be going down. And then I'll ride it for maybe 3 candles and then get out. Okay? Least favorite session. Other place you could be trading price action, where I think is a little easier, the Tokyo session, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's my time. All right? You need to figure out when the Tokyo session opens up for you. 2 hours and a half after the open of the Tokyo session, you will begin to see price action. Why? Because the market had been stale from the New York close. The next ideal time I like to see price action, 2 a.m. in the morning for me, the Swiss franc open. You need to go and figure out when the Swiss franc opens for your time frame. Price action trading is a good way to build very, very small accounts. This video is gonna have timestamps. It was a long one. I love you. God bless you. And I will be making a video on each strategy that I just explained to go into it deeper. I know I did a lot of talking. It can be very overwhelming for people who don't trade, but not to worry. The comment section is for questions. I will answer them. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button before you leave the video. And one love.